The Mayflower Electronics O2 headphone amplifier and ODAC delivers a completely neutral sound signature while having enough amplification power to drive any pair of headphones you can throw at it. But please don't actually throw your headphones at the DAC because that's dangerous. Click the link in the description to learn more. Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Star Wars Battlefront closed alpha, which we just had over this weekend, and sort of give you my review on what I was able to get hands-on with this weekend. Now, unfortunately, I didn't even get an invite to the damn event. I mean, I've got over 3,000 hours logged on Battlefield games, going back to Bad Company 2. So I don't know why the hell I wasn't invited to the event. I don't know if it's completely random, but me and a lot of my friends didn't get invited. Fortunately, I was able to sit down and still play the alpha despite not being invited, which actually puts me in a unique position because if I wasn't invited, I didn't agree to any NDAs. They wanted to leave me out in the cold like I was fucking stuck on Hoth, so now I'm going to bring you guys my thoughts and opinions on the game. Now, unfortunately, because of the NDAs and copyright claims and things like that, I'm not going to be able to show you any footage from the closed alpha. Didn't capture any footage, didn't take any screenshots, so I'm not going to be able to share that with you, but I can share my thoughts and experiences and tell you what I saw playing the closed alpha. So the first thing I want to address a little bit are the graphics options and also the performance of the game. Keep in mind that all of this is subject to change as this is closed alpha. They've still got a few months to go before this is readily available on November 17th, 2015. Looking at the options menu, they had a very similar set of options to what I would expect to see in a Frostbite game, just like in Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Dragon Age Inquisition. The formula has not changed all that much at all. The one thing I did notice was that there was no MSAA option, so that was interesting to see, but they did have an anti-aliasing option that went all the way up to Ultra, I believe, if I can remember correctly. As far as performance on the game, no SLI was supported. I did try briefly to run SLI by forcing it to use the Battlefield drivers, which did give me some pretty good performance scaling. I was able to get my frames all the way up to 130 in SLI, but it gave me some really bad flickering. It was not playable using the SLI in the way that I tried to use it. They're going to need to put out an SLI profile for the game, and being that it's on Frostbite 3, I have no doubt that that will happen and that there will be a good SLI profile for this game, as there's a pretty good track record on this engine with the Battlefield games and Dragon Age Inquisition to have good SLI scaling. That being said, testing on a single 980 Ti at 1440, I was always over 60 frames, most of the time getting up around the 70 to 80 range. I would say that this is a little bit more demanding than Battlefield 4 for sure, but not as demanding as Dragon Age Inquisition. Dragon Age Inquisition is a little bit kind of unoptimized, maybe possibly due to the de novo DRM, maybe, possibly. Yeah, well, that's, you know, topic for another day, but it was performing slightly worse than Battlefield 4, but I also think it looks a little bit better than Battlefield 4. The lighting and textures, definitely the textures, I thought had a nice visual upgrade, especially on the second map, the co-op multiplayer map, the co-op and single-player map, I should say, that was not available in the multiplayer. I believe it's set on Tatooine, kind of like a rocky looking planet. Really, really beautiful though. The way the light hit the rocks and everything like that in there were just absolutely gorgeous. Some of the particle effects in the game were beautiful. The explosions looked, oh my god, amazing. Amazing that, you know, they're doing this on their Havoc physics engine, not using NVIDIA physics or anything like that, and it looks incredible. And didn't notice any severe performance lag spikes when those explosions were kicking in and you were seeing particle effects kicking off everywhere. There's also particle effects when your blaster shots make contact with enemies, which is nice because you have a good level of visual feedback when you see your bullets make contact without having the necessity for big blatant hit markers. Next thing I wanted to touch on a little bit was the sound design and soundtrack of the game. My god, are the sound effects in this game just absolutely perfect, and I would expect nothing else from DICE, who has a proven track record of doing some pretty excellent sound design going all the way back to Bad Company 1 and 2. Just I've always had really, really good sound effects in games, and that is no different here in Battlefront. A lot of the sound effects sound like they were ripped directly from the original trilogy, which in my opinion could not have been more perfect considering the setting of the game, fighting around on Hoth and Tatooine. It's absolutely perfect. And the music also, molto bella. Literally like pulled from the John Williams Orchestra. I feel like the John Williams Orchestra is playing in the background as I'm sitting there scaling along Hoth with a jetpack and shooting stormtroopers in the face. Okay, so how does the game play? The best thing I could compare it to is it's sort of like a marriage between Bad Company 2 and Battlefront 2, which is not a bad thing at all, especially on the map that I did play on Hoth. It's a very, very linear map, which reminds me a lot of the Bad Company 2 maps that were definitely geared towards Rush, and being that this was the AT-AT Walker mode, which is very much like Rush with kind of a big walking metal giant behind you as you're moving along, through trenches and small corridors to try to plant objectives and continue to move the AT-ATs through the level. It's definitely sort of like just basically a Star Wars themed Rush mode, and I think they did really, really well this time. Definitely better than some of the makeshift modes they had in Hardline like Heist and Blood Money. I really enjoyed playing this game mode, enjoyed the combat quite a bit. As far as the combat is concerned, they only had 4 weapons in the closed alpha, so obviously I'm expecting that to be expanded considerably when the game finally does come out with like Han Solo's blaster. But they had 4 weapons in the game. There was 2 main blasters, a hand blaster, just sort of like a smaller blaster, and then also the heavy blaster, which is sort of like the MG of the game. All of them handled pretty well. There wasn't really a lot of noticeable recoil using the weapons, but there was also slower rate of fires or velocity with the rounds. You definitely have to lead your targets a little bit more if they're further away, and I felt like it took a lot more skill to get your rounds on target if they were further away. The next thing you're going to be utilizing besides your primary weapon are one of your 3 perks, basically, that they have in the game. There was 2 different sets that you could choose from, so depending on which one you choose, you get 3 perks in there. The one I was primarily using had a jetpack and like a barrage thing that basically shot like, it was like a grenade launcher that shot 3 shots, and then you use these abilities, and then they recharge slowly. If I had to guess, I would say maybe it was about a 30-second cooldown before you could use these abilities again. The jetpack I thought was really fun, and also very useful, especially on the multiplayer map that I was able to play on Hoth, because there's a lot of open space where there's not a ton of cover, and you have to get between one trench to the next, and I felt that I could always utilize my jetpack to be able to do that quite effectively to get from one trench to the next. I also was able to use it quite effectively when getting in combat with enemies, maybe enemies that had a little bit higher ground than me. I could use the jetpack to sort of vault over them and then lay down fire from the air where they're going to have a little bit more trouble hitting me, and then finally finishing them off as I hit the ground, or even vaulting through the air on a jetpack and then launching down the grenade launcher shots on people. It remains to be seen whether this stuff is going to be, balanced when it comes out at launch and we get to play it a lot more. But right now, I would say it did seem fairly balanced. The other set of perks that they had was there was the jetpack again. Then you had a sort of like a bubble shield that you could put around you, along with a thermal detonator that you could throw. This was the second tier of perks that you can use, as opposed to the one that I was talking about before with the grenade launcher. One thing I noticed with this class that a lot of people were doing was putting on their bubble shields and then dropping thermal detonators, because you could throw the thermal detonator when you had your bubble shield down, but you couldn't fire. If you have the bubble shield down, it's around you, you can't fire outside the bubble shield. It stays up for a period of time until the cooldown is over, or until the enemies have put enough fire on you to be able to break down your shield, essentially, and then get rounds onto you. The next thing I want to touch on is this sort of like token system. Now, as you're going around the map, there are these sort of like holographic tokens on the ground that you can pick up that give you sort of like it's like a power pickup, essentially. Didn't really like the implementation of this. I don't like the implementation of having these floating hologram tokens around the map. It seems kind of lazy, because this is the way you get in the AT-ATs, the AT-STs, the TIE Fighters, the X-Wings. This is how you get into your vehicles. You just run up, pick up a token, and then it gets assigned to it's on the keyboard, it's 4. You know, your abilities, your perks that you have are assigned 1 through 3, and then this, when you pick one up, is assigned to 4. You just hit that, your guy takes a knee, and then boom, he's in a TIE fighter, which, by the way, handles absolutely terribly. I don't know what they're thinking with the aerial vehicles in this game, but they really need to tweak the controls, and hopefully that's just indicative of it being alpha, and they're going to take some feedback on the forums to fix the aerial flight controls. And everyone I spoke to that played this closed alpha had the same exact thing to say about the aircraft. And if you played the closed alpha and you disagree, let me know down in the comments below, because if you were able to figure out how to appropriately handle the TIE fighters or X-Wings or any of the aircraft in the game, then I would love to hear your method or what you were able to do to be able to tame these beasts, because I just couldn't do it. I hopped in, I thought, okay, this is going to control like a battlefield jet. Nuh-uh. You think it's going to control like a battlefield jet, but then you try to turn and it's just like, it just doesn't want to go. It's really, really stiff and kind of weird. Really hope that they do fix that as we get closer to launch. But back to talking about the token system, you know, like I said, you do have these tokens that you pick up so that you can get in vehicles, and I don't like that implementation. I would rather run up to the vehicle and get in myself, have it in the base, kind of like in Battlefield. I would like to see that, you know, be a little bit more natural, so I'm not a fan of the token system in regards to the vehicles. There are other power pickups you can get, like orbital strikes and thermal detonators that you get in the tokens, and then you have that ability that you can use just once, and then it's exhausted and you can no longer use it. The tokens seem to respawn fairly quickly. I've been in an ATST and gotten out and been able to pick up a token again for the very same vehicle, so they did seem to recharge quite fast. I did have another complaint about the AT-AT and the ATST. Now, of course, if you watch my previous video on everything wrong with Star Wars Battlefront, you'll know that the AT-ATs are on rails. It's a completely on-rail experience. When you get in it, it's just walking, and then you're able to fire the main guns. The ATSTs, you can control the two-legged walkers. You can control those guys and walk around and shoot people. You've got 2 primary weapons in there. You've got just a sort of blaster round and then a larger missile round that has a cooldown. But the big complaint I had about these was the aiming. That you had a center point reticle, but your rounds kind of went like almost like maybe like 5 meters below it, which felt really, really odd to have them coming out of the vehicle lower than the reticle. You would think that they would start center on the reticle, wherever that is, and then maybe have a drop-off over range, but it was actually the complete opposite. I've noticed that my rounds would sort of come to the center point from underneath the further that the targets were away. So it was kind of odd, didn't feel very intuitive, and that's one of those things that I just hope that they fix as we get, you know, maybe another beta, or when the game finally does come out later this year. So that's going to wrap it up for my thoughts on the Star Wars Battlefront Alpha. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you played the closed alpha, please let me know your thoughts on it down below. If you agreed with me or disagreed with me, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on it as well, as I am going to be bringing you coverage of this game throughout the years. It's a title that I am looking forward to playing. I would say that I'm looking forward to it a lot more now that I've actually been able to get hands-on with it than I was a few months ago when I did my Everything Wrong with Star Wars Battlefront video, which was a lot of fun. It was a funny video. If you guys missed it, I'll put a link down to it in the description below so you can check that out. But yeah, really looking forward to this game coming out now. Still wouldn't pre-order. Do not support pre-ordering games. But I'm going to be playing the game when it does come out, and I'll be bringing you my thoughts on it as it becomes available. And hopefully we do get another beta soon, and I can bring you my thoughts on that as well. So I'm going to catch you guys next time. Ta-ra.